Welcome to the Buy American Provision Information Buffet. I'm Ruth Howard, a child nutrition specialist here at the Office of Nutrition Programs and Services. We will record the main portion of today's training and post it to our YouTube channel so that you can view it in the future. So let's get started. On April 25th, 2024, Food Nutrition Services published the final rule, Child Nutrition Programs, Meal Patterns consistent with the 2020-2025 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. Among other provisions, this rule finalizes regulations that strengthen the school meal programs Buy American provision. There are different exemptions for Alaska, Hawaii, and the U.S. territories. The Buy American provision requires school food authorities to purchase, to the maximum extent feasible, domestic commodities or products. The Buy American provision applies to school food authorities located in the 48 contiguous United States. This provision supports the mission of the child nutrition programs, which is to serve children nutritious meals and support American agriculture. Program regulations that govern this provision apply to the school food authorities that operate the National School Lunch and/or School Breakfast programs and are found at 7 CFR 210-21D and 7 CFR 220-16D, respectively. This memorandum provides information regarding the implementation of the Buy American provisions recently codified in the final regulations. The final rule codifies the two limited exceptions as follows. The product is listed on the Federal Acquisitions Regulations FAR non-available articles list found at 48 CFR 25.104 and or is not produced or manufactured in the U.S. in sufficient and reasonably available quantities of a satisfactory quality. USDA codified regulations the requirement for school food authorities to maintain documentation to demonstrate the use of exceptions. Items found on the Federal Acquisitions Regulations non-available article lists are exempt from the documentation requirement, but these items must be counted toward the cap on non-domestic purchases that will go into effect on July 1st, 2025. Competitive bids revealed that the cost of a U.S. product are significantly higher than the non-domestic product. And here are the CFRs that reference that. And as of today, USDA has not defined significantly higher. The threshold will have to be determined by the local school food authority and use that threshold consistently for your non-domestic purchases. Before using an exception, school food authorities should first consider and document their responses to the following questions. Are there any other domestic sources for this product? Is there a domestic product that could easily be substituted for the non-domestic product on the menu? For example, substitute domestic pears for non-domestic pears. Am I soliciting bids for this product at the best time of the year? If I contracted earlier or later in the season, would prices and or availability change? Am I using third-party verification, such as through the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service webpage, to determine the cost and availability of domestic and non-domestic foods? You must have the exception before you purchase and use the product. The link to the USDA Marketing Services webpage is listed in the resources of this presentation. Cap on non-domestic food purchases. As of July 1st, 2025, for the school year 25-26, the non-domestic food purchase cap will be 10%. That's 10% of your total annual commercial food costs. Best practice will be to use the USDA Buy American exception tracking tool. The link to that is in the resources as well. So let's look at the Buy American exception tracking tool. This is the exception summary page. You're going to enter your total annual commercial food costs here. All the other data on this tab is generated when you enter your non-domestic food purchases on the other tab. It is important to enter your purchases as they occur so you can judge how close you are getting to the 10% limit. Items found on the Federal Acquisition Regulations non-available articles list are exempt from the documentation required, but these items must be counted toward the cap on non-domestic purchases when that goes into effect on July 1st, 2025. Items purchased through USDA Foods will not be included as they are not commercial purchases. Enter your purchases on the Exceptions Tracker tab. Exception types. The product is listed on the Federal Acquisitions Regulations non-available article list. The product is not produced or manufactured in the U.S. in sufficient and reasonably available quantities of a satisfactory quality, or competitive bids reveal the cost of a U.S. product are significantly higher than the non-domestic product. Whatever the exception is, the product still counts towards your total amount of your cap. You do not have to enter the unit price per unit, or number of units, but you must enter the total amount of the purchase. Check your procurement procedures and policies to make sure the Buy American provision is included where applicable. This is now a program regulation. USDA codified the definition of substantially that was previously provided in guidance. The definition is as follows: substantially using the agricultural commodities that are produced in the United States means over 51% of a food product must consist of agricultural commodities that were grown domestically, and that is codified as well. Manufacturers or vendors should be able to supply you with this documentation. Do not purchase or use these products until you have the documentation. Clarification on requirements of harvested, farmed, and wild-caught fish. So farm fish must be harvested within the United States or any territory or possession of the United States. Wild-caught fish must be harvested within the exclusive economic zone of the United States or by a United States flagged vessel. And here are the CFRs codifying that as well. Here's the resources. Everything that I talked about you can find here, but of course you can always email if you have questions. And as always, we present the non-discrimination statement so that you know you're using the correct one. Here is our contact information. And now we will stop recording.